I'm not sure this lesson will live up to the introduction this morning by the announcer. I don't know how exciting it's going to be, but hopefully it'll be interesting. And hopefully you'll hear me if I turn this on. There you go. I'm in the process of, have been for a while, of getting ready to teach the Divided Kingdom in the adult class. And I find it a very interesting study. I taught it twice a long time ago. So long ago that 3 of the books I'm using to study it out of weren't published when I did it the last time. So I have to read these new books. Also, you have the web, and I love the web. I love it when I'm studying for our adult class now. You can look up any question, you can ask any question. The problem is you can do that, and you can spend hours looking at all the information that will flood your way. So like everything else, it's got its pluses and minuses. We're sort of going to talk about that a little tonight. When you're studying the divided kingdom and you're really looking at why the kingdom divided, what you get into, or at least I've gotten into, is what's the root causes? Nothing happens overnight. Nothing happens because of one incident. It's a constant build-up that takes you there. But when we think of the divided kingdom, we think of Solomon. Because it is at his point that the Lord said, I'm going to split the kingdom at the end of his reign. But we also think of Solomon when we think of wise men. He was said by the Lord that he was the wisest man on the earth at the time. I've worked with a lot of wise men, a lot of knowledgeable men, but I wouldn't call any of them the wisest person on earth. That's what Solomon was called. Great wisdom. Probably one of the most interesting people in the Bible. Great heights, great lows. Interesting too that I had to be reminded of is that when Solomon became king, the estimation is that he was between 12 and 20 years old. A very young man. People tend to go more to the 20-year-old than the 12-year-old side. But still, 20 years old, and you've been made king of God's people. Daunting. God came to him in a dream. And he said to him, or I should say, he said, and this leads us to believe that he was very young. In 1 Kings 3:7, he says, Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David. But I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And probably during his youth, he also asked this question, which was in verses 9 through 10. We just read 7. Therefore, give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people. That I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? The speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked these things. He started out well. We believe this dream probably came to him very early on. So what we're going to look at a little tonight is what happened after that. Sort of titled this lesson, Solomon, a Paradox. Paradox. What's a paradox? The definition of paradox is one such as a person, situation, or action having seemingly contradictory qualities. I think Solomon is the personification of paradox. Seemingly contradictory qualities. Let's look at some things about him. Let's look at his accomplishments. That's what most people think of all the time. The great accomplishments that he did. He had a 40-year reign. He built the most magnificent temple. Maybe not the biggest, but absolutely the most beautiful most magnificent temple. There would not be another like it. No gold was spared in putting it together. The walls were covered with gold. Everything was gold in it. It was magnificent. It was beautiful. He was the builder of that. David wasn't allowed to. David collected a lot of the material for it, but David wasn't allowed to build it. Incomparable beauty. He increased the borders to the greatest extent and secured them. Secured them. 1 Kings 4:24, when he had dominion over all region of this side of the river, from Tippish even to Gaza, namely over all the kings on the sides of the river, and he had peace on every side all around him. And Judah and Israel and dwelt safely, each man under his vine and his fig tree, from Dan as far as Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. And one of the things we conservative types want to point out is that the reason he never had a major war, because he made sure he was strong, that his borders were secure. He built fortifications for that person, fortified cities. He had chariots stationed that could move quickly to the defense of any area. In other words, he wasn't easy pickings. That's something that we need to make sure we understand in this country. There is evil people out there, and if they see weakness, they will try to take advantage of it. So he was strong, and he secured those borders, and he spread them out. Well, not until later that he had some problems. He spoke 3,000 proverbs. We only have a small portion of them in the book of Proverbs. He authored 1,005 songs, 1,005 songs, which psalms, if you will. We only have 2 of them that are in our book that are attributed to him, Psalm 72 and Psalm 127. But he wrote 1,005. It'd be wonderful to see those. He was probably the writer of Ecclesiastes. I'm not quite as sure as Tommy was about that he's the writer, but all evidence tends to go in that direction, that he was the writer of it. But there's some complications with that. One of the ones is, when did he write it? So, by the way, I was sitting there in the pew, and Tommy gets up here, and he's going to give a lesson on Solomon. I said, well, there's a lot of work down the drain. But he went off on a different tack than mine. He was the probable writer of I didn't want to go there. He was the probable writer of Ecclesiastes, most of Proverbs, not all of it. And we know he wrote the Song of Solomon. Who else would write the Song of Solomon? And it says, as we said before, he was wiser than all the men. Kings 4:31. He was wiser than all men. What does it mean to be wise? What does it mean to be the wisest person? Wisdom. The quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. Whoops. That's all right. We're going to get there again. I haven't done this in a while. Bear with me. The quality of soundness of an action or decision regarding the application of experience and knowledge. And that's what we're going to look at a little. Did Solomon always apply his wisdom and knowledge in his personal life? There was a study done about, it's got to be 30 years ago now. I remember everything as being only 10 years ago. Probably about 30 years ago. They did a study of people that had very high marks on their test in college, high IQ, if you will. And then they followed them in their career after college. And many of the people that scored very high and were very high in their classes never really named much of themselves afterwards. And what they found was they were capable of memorizing, photographic memory, if you will, but they didn't have the ability to apply that which they knew. So knowledge and wisdom not applied properly isn't worth a lot. And I've known people like that. I've worked with people with PhDs and multiple master's degrees, and I think the one guy couldn't use a can opener if you asked him to. But anyway, what wrong path did Solomon go down? What wrong path did he go down? Excuse me. Well, we all remember this one. He married Pharaoh's daughter for political reasons. 1 Kings 3:1. It says, Now Solomon made a treaty with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married Pharaoh's daughter. It's what kings did. It's what kings do. It's what kings have done all the way through the centuries up until recently. You realize that in World War I that most of the monarchs were either cousins or second cousins that were fighting in that war? They all intermarried. It's what kings do. Is it what this king should have done? He burned incense on the high places. Well, the temple wasn't built yet. But the high places will be a thorn in the kings of Israel's side all throughout the rest of the time. He burned incense on the high places. Excuse me. This one gets me. He built a large, opulent palace for himself that took 13 years to build and untold workers and money to build it. 13 years. How long did he take building the temple? 7 years. But his place, and that's just the palace itself. I'm not sure if that included what they call the room of the forest, I think it's called. 13 years. This thing was massive, and it was opulent. He had a throne made of ivory, which was overlaid with pure gold. An ivory throne overlaid with pure gold. You're starting to see a trend here. All the palace's vessels were pure gold. Pure gold. And they said gold was plentiful in Israel. Had 40,000 stalls of horses. 40,000. Look at that again. Conscripted laborers from all of Israel. 30,000 men. They had to serve 1 month, and then they were off 2 months. And that was from all the districts, mostly from the north. And that plays into why the north was looking for relief when Solomon died. Not only did he conscript these people, but he sent shifts of 10,000 each month to Lebanon. That's out of this group. He also took all of the people in Israel that were not Jews, that were the people left over from the conquest, and he made them all slaves to work in his various projects. And then in his own personal work of building all these different things he was building, the fortresses, the fortified cities, the palace, he had thousands of transporters and hewers. You can see this massive building going on, this massive work that he had going. These workers were getting paid. So, what's he starting to look like? He's starting to look like the kings that are all around him. He's starting to go the same route they go. He's looking for wealth in this world, pleasure in this world. And if you read Ecclesiastes, and you believe he wrote it at the end of his life, the one that wrote it, the king that wrote that, had experienced everything, or tried to experience everything, to the extreme. This fits. Married foreign women. And I wasn't supposed to do that. He married foreign women. 700 wives, 300 concubines. That number just staggers me. If he wanted to spend 1 day with each woman, it would take him 3 years, roughly, to go to every one. 1,000 women. Well, we'll look at that too. 2 major failures of Solomon. 2 major failures. Increasing pride, decreasing obedience. What instructions did the Lord give for the future king? What instructions did he give? Deuteronomy 17, 18 to 20, I'm going to read that. Also it shall be when he sits on the throne of his kingdom that he shall write for himself a copy of this law in a book from the one before the priest and the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, and be careful to observe all the words of the law and these statutes, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brethren, that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, and that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. He shall read all the days of his life, that his heart may not be lifted above his brethren, and that he may not turn aside from the commandments. This is obviously a good spot to plug reading the Bible every day. I think we still have copies of the 5-day Bible program out on the table out there. We did. If you want one, we can get it for you. I use a Bible program that's part of my Olive Tree Bible program that I have on my computer. But you can go on the web and you can find any flavor of yearly Bible program you want that suits you. I like mine because I read the New Testament usually in the morning. I read the Old Testament at night. But it's a good way to start the day. So why do I have to read the Bible all the time? I already read it once. I mean, I don't read my other books all the time unless I'm looking for a reference. Why do we read it every day? Why did he need to read it every day? Well, one, it allows you to meditate on the Lord, start your day with meditation on the Lord, thinking about the Lord, remembering that you are a child of God and that you're under his laws. You must follow his laws. Remind ourselves of the scriptures and of God's will. And it takes us a year to do it. Now, if you miss a day, as I think we have, Carrie, both of us, have missed a day on our program, that's okay. You can make it up, or you don't have to make it up. But the idea is that try and start your day with the Bible. Try and end your day with the Bible. But read it constantly. With my memory, I need to constantly be reading things over and over again because I don't remember anything anymore. And you also can't remember. That's a lot of information on that little book we've got. You keep reading it. And we've always said that the more you read it, the more you see things that maybe you didn't see the first time you read it, or the second time. Or as your knowledge grows, things you pick up that you just read over before. It's always new, it's always interesting, it's always important. So that's my plug for reading the Bible. So he was told to do that. He was told to read that Bible, to read his scriptures every day, all year. King of Israel, smartest man in the world. If he was told to do that, we probably should be doing that too. Had he not read? I love that's a Bible term. Have you not read? Have you not read? Do you not know what the Lord wants you to do? Deuteronomy 17:16. But he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For the Lord has said to you, you shall not return that way again. What did Solomon do? 1 Kings 4:26. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. In 1 Kings 10:28, also Solomon had horses imported from Egypt in Kiva. The king's merchants bought them in Kiva at the current price. Exactly opposite of what he was told to do. 17:17a. Neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away. Excuse me. But King did I have that on there? Yeah. But King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Amorites, Edomites, Sidonians, Hittites, from the nations of whom the Lord had said to the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. Solomon clung to these with love. Again, clearly in the Word of God, he was not to do this, especially with those women, especially gathering many women to his life. Had he not read, nor shall you greatly multiply silver and gold to yourself. 1 Kings 10. 14 through 15. The weight of gold that came to Solomon yearly was 666 talents of gold. Besides that, from the traveling merchants and from the income of traders and from all the kings of Arabia and from the governors of the country. 16, well, it basically said that gold was without counting in Israel at that time. Silver was almost not worth anything because it was like a secondary material. Exodus 24 through 5. You shall not make for yourself carved images or any likeness, anything that is in heaven above or that is in the earth below or that is in the water underneath the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. 1 Kings 1, 7 through 8. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the people of Ammon. And he did likewise for all his foreign wives, who burned incense and sacrificed them to God. 1 Kings 1:4. For it was so when Solomon was old, that his wives turned his heart after other gods, that his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. Whenever emotion gets involved, usually knowledge and wisdom are often overruled. Samson, I want that Philistine wife. No, you need to marry a good Jewish girl, but I want that Philistine wife. How did that turn out for Samson? Not too good. But even though he knew he should not be doing that, even though his parents told him not to do that, he insisted. But I love her. I want her. And that happens. It's happened. Any one of us that have been around a while has seen it happen more than once. When the heart, emotions get involved, reasons sometimes go out the door. But my marriage with Judy has pretty much worked out. Anyway, so I'll pay for that later. Solomon went from chosen of God to rejected by God. And that's not what's supposed to come up. Okay, we'll go with that. 1 Kings. So the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned from the Lord God of Israel, who had appeared to him. Did Solomon not read the scriptures? Did he not understand them? The smartest man in the world at the time? Were they difficult to understand? Were they difficult to understand? Of all the scriptures that we've read, of all the things that we've looked at, and we've looked at just a small portion that we could look at, were any of them hard to understand? Were they confusing? Were they ambiguous? Were there maybe more than one interpretation or another? I think not. I think they were as plain and as clear as they possibly could be. And Solomon did not follow them. So the point is that who here tonight is as wise and blessed as Solomon was? Who tonight feels that they cannot fall as he did? Sex and money are the two great destroyers of faith. That's some examples. We have a little bit of time left. I have a man that I thought the world of. He was a hard-working family man, strong in the church, strong in the scriptures, a real cornerstone in the congregation he was in. He was able to buy a company. The company became successful. His house became bigger. His cars became more expensive. He left his wife, and he left the church. The lure of wealth, the lure of all the pleasures that this life can give you. It's a tremendous pull. Was it a tremendous pull for Solomon? I've known of preachers who have committed adultery, members who had been addicted to porn, men that have left the faith because they had other pursuits they would rather follow, and the church was interfering with that. Who of us is as wise as Solomon? Who of us has his intelligence, his knowledge? So none of us should feel secure that we can't be affected by this. If it affected Solomon, if it tore him down, it can tear any of us down. It can tear anyone down. And that gets into a whole idea of not following man, because if you looked at Solomon, you'd say, why would you not follow Solomon? Chosen of God. Look at what he's done. Can't follow man. We have to keep going back to the scriptures. Same questions we asked of us. Have you not read the scriptures? Because when you come before the Lord, that's what's going to count. Well, I didn't have time. I didn't read that section. Oh, that's what that said? Oh, I didn't know I was doing wrong. How does that work when you stop by a cop, by the way? Not too good. Did you not understand them? Did you not understand them? There are scriptures that you might say are difficult or need to be studied deeper, but the scriptures that you need to know, what you need to do to be a child of God, are not hard to understand. They're not difficult. It's only when we get into different areas. But what you have to do for your salvation is simple and clear and understandable. You don't need the mind of Solomon to do it. Did you apply them? Knowing the scriptures and not applying them is doing nothing for you. Application is the problem. I see what the scriptures say, but that's not really what I want to do. That doesn't fit with my lifestyle. Doesn't fit with my emotions. We have to apply that which we read. We have to be honest when we read the scriptures, that it's in our heart to do them to the best of our understanding and ability. You have to apply them. The scriptures are our guide. They will keep us from making the sins of Solomon. Colossians 3, 5 through 6. Therefore put to death your members which are on the earth: fornication, uncleanness, passions, evil desires, covetousness, which is idolatry. Because of these things, the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience. Same throughout all history. 1 John 2, 15 through 17. Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever. Is there anything worth having in this world, or any pleasure worth giving up eternity with God? Is there any greater value you can put on anything but then the promises God has given us of what we're looking forward to? And if I find the right page, we're going to conclude this lesson. There we go. I've told the story that the first time I ever had to go before a group and give a talk, I had all my things on 3x5 cards. As I was walking up, as nervous as can be, I dropped the cards. There had to be at least a dozen of them. I didn't number them. I didn't get a good mark on that. Lust for gratification in this world has only temporary benefit. Keeping God's commandments will provide eternal joy. We're going to sing a song that Carrie has been kind enough to lead for us, that I asked him to. We have an anchor. The anchor that we have is the Scriptures, is God's Word. That anchor will hold us throughout all the storms of life. If we hold fast to that anchor will keep us secure and from drifting away in the storms of life. If you don't have that anchor, if you need that anchor, then we offer you that security tonight. If you wish to come forward for any reason to put yourself right with God, we ask you to do so as we stand and sing the song.